Hello, my little shrubs. I hope you're doing well. Today we are breaking apart yet another 90s show. I'm a little scared of making this one because there's not a lot of videos on the internet about it. I may offend an entire fan base, which is not really my goal. Please know that I come in peace. As some of you may remember, last year I made a video about the Gilmore Girls and about the food obsession in the show. That video actually got a really good response and a lot of comments from people asking me to look into other shows, which I have tried to do, but unfortunately there are some shows that I just can't. I tried watching Gossip Girl and, kind of leaving high school, watching a show where people of my age now or older are pretending to be teenagers in a high school. I'm sorry, it's just not for me. Plus, have you seen how that dude turned out? Not good. But one show that was consistently mentioned on the comments was The Nanny. And for some mysterious reason, I have never heard about this show or watched any episodes, apart from the video that Mina made a while back talking about the fashion and the outfits on the show. So 3 months ago, I started watching The Nanny, and I have now finished all the 6 seasons of it. All I knew going into this show is that people were saying there were some things that were worth analyzing on the way food is portrayed on the show. I'm not trying to be the PC police on a 30-year-old show. I do realize things were different back then, and we're going to talk all about that during this video. I know it's just a show, it's not real, but something we've talked about before on the channel is how media can warp our perceptions of diet culture, food, anything. So if someone does share their experience that the show affected them in some way when they watched it when they were young, please don't invalidate their feelings. This channel is a safe place. If you don't agree with something I say, then you are more than welcome to disagree with me. Leave your thoughts in the comments, debate amongst yourselves. Please just do it respectfully. Also, pretty obvious, but this video is going to mention some spoilers because it would be impossible to analyze some of the things I'm going to talk about without giving examples. But if you do want to watch the show before watching this video, then please go ahead. I'll be here when you come back. No, seriously, go. I'll wait for you. So to start on a lighter note, I will tell you all the things that I loved about the show. First of all, this show has one of the most perfect pilot episodes of all time. Okay? In 20 minutes, you get to know all the important characters, you understand all their motivations, what the plot's going to be like, and everything for the next 6 seasons. 10 out of 10, really. The jokes were honestly hilarious. Not like breathing through your nose funny, like actually laughing out loud hilarious. Like at that moment, I was wondering, how is it possible that I never heard about this show before? If you watch my video about the Gilmore Girls, you'll know that I have a full section on that video talking about food acting alone. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing here, but basically food acting is when actors use food as props or a way to tell a story or develop a character on screen. I'm very passionate about the whole thing, and in that video I had a lot to say about it in respect to the Gilmore Girls because the way they talked about food and the way they interacted with the food on screen just didn't match. And if you're passionate about these things and you pay attention to these details as a viewer, it can be a little annoying. So you bet I was damn curious to see how the nanny interacted with food on screen. I'm pleased to say that the show passed the test remarkably. And I didn't even need to go past the first episode to see this, but I do assure you that throughout the entire series, this stays impeccable. Now, we're not talking about how they talk about food specifically just yet, but how they interact with it on screen. The scene from the first episode shows Fran coming down for breakfast for the first time, which becomes a common scene in many episodes. She goes around the scenery, picking and putting food on her plate while she delivers her lines.
Where do I sit?
The previous nanny sat in the kitchen.
Oh, how antisocial.
She sits down, continues to build her plate by adding salt and pepper, cuts up the food, gets up to go grab some coffee. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast is also interacting with the environment. Niles the butler is putting things away, removing plates when Mr. Sheffield leaves. The kids are actually eating and drinking while Fran talks with them, and then she leaves to get ready and takes the food with her, implying that she's going to finish her meal in her room.
Let me just take this. I hate to waste.
And the kids stay on the table until the scene cuts, implying that they stay to finish their meal. I honestly hope they teach this scene in schools because If we analyze this scene meticulously from beginning to end, very little food is actually eaten by the actors. But the way their actions are choreographed and flow through the scene make the breakfast scene much more realistic, and we actually perceive that they are in fact having breakfast while speaking to each other. They're not just sitting in front of a table and a plate, or just playing with their food and making it super obvious. If you look closely at Brighton, he's actually just smashing his fork repeatedly into the food, bless him. But when you have Gracie on the other end of the scene actually drinking from a glass, it's not distracting. So far, I'm happy. I'm really fascinated with these details and I really like seeing it being done well. 10 points for The Nanny, especially as many of the early season episodes were filmed in front of a live audience. Great job. There's many other examples that I noticed during the series, but you can just tell that Fran Drescher, the actress that plays the nanny, Fran, who's also named Fran, she's a very good food actor and she choreographs the scenes to give flow and continuity to the scene without it being too distracting. So now, as I was watching the first season, I didn't find anything odd or off-putting about the jokes. I rolled into season 2 and it started becoming one of those shows that you kind of like watch lying sideways, like on your side, with one eye kind of open for some lighthearted entertainment. At this point, I was thinking I may be missing something because I couldn't see anything of what people were commenting about the show. And just like that, I rolled into season 3. And suddenly, from this point on, we have a million things to talk about. So let's go by order of severity. First couple of things that started to annoy me a little bit were things that actually have nothing to do with food, but it's ideas and things that were prevalent in the 90s, which watching back 30 years are a little annoying. By the way, fair warning, spoiler alert until the end of the video. One of the things that annoyed me to no bounds was the inevitable coupling of Fran and Mr. Sheffield, which we know is going to happen at some point from episode 1. But oh my god, they managed to drag it out for 5 entire seasons. Maybe it's more annoying when you binge watch all 6 seasons straight one after the other, but I can't imagine back in the day waiting week after week for a new episode and having to wait 5 years for them to get together when you know they are getting together from episode 1. I actually heard that Fran Drescher, who created the show, wanted them to never actually get together. That is diabolical. So how do they manage to drag this thing on for 5 seasons, you ask? Well, there's a very simple formula. First, Fran meets a man, and then that man proposes to her immediately, like on the first day. And she accepts because she really wants to get married. Then Mr. Sheffield gets jealous because Fran is going to marry another man. But then that man turns out to be lying about something, or he's a con man, or he's her cousin, and then she breaks it off, and then Mr. Sheffield is happy because she's not marrying anyone after all. And this happens like at least on 4 different occasions that I can remember now, but maybe well more than that. And it just becomes a little bit too repetitive. Plus, maybe the United States have different dating standards, but Fran and Mr. Sheffield kiss multiple times, and then the next episode, it's like nothing ever happened. Then we have the thing that Mr. Sheffield took back. I'm not going to elaborate any further than that. If you know, you know. But who does that? This might be a little bit controversial, but I'm gonna say it. I don't care that you're a millionaire. You're a little bit trash, and Fran deserved better. There. Attached to this, something that starts happening and is the desperation that Fran develops over wanting to marry Mr. Sheffield. The man, it's almost a lot cost. He can't make up his mind. And then the jokes become hyper-focused on Fran is getting older. Fran is never going to get married. And then Sylvia, her mom, she's super dramatic and it's a big tragedy that her daughter is never going to marry.
I just want you to have a full life.
You don't have to be married to have a full life, Ma. Sure, I'd like to someday, but if I don't, it doesn't mean my life was worthless. Right? Right? Right?
I honestly honestly love Sylvia's character and how dramatic she is. I think is hilarious. But it just becomes so that the plot revolves around how Fran's purpose as a woman only gets realized if and when she gets married. An online article puts it simply, Fran knows that her best chance at financial comfort is to choose the same career that has always provided it to women. She wants to get promoted to wife. But hey, this is the 90s, and we actually just talked about this in my recent video about weddings and marriage, so go check it out after this one if you want to. But it's just one of those things that I think hopefully would be handled a little differently if this show was made in 2023. Equally, why are we swooning over Mr. Sheffield's gray streak on his hair?
You dyed your gray streak? What the hell is wrong with you?
But Fran has to constantly lie about her age because somehow being one day older than 29 is undesirable.
I mean, the years are passing me by. 27, 28, 29, 29, 29.
I wish I could say that this is because this was the 90s and it's a product of the times, but unfortunately I don't think Hollywood has moved that far. DiCaprio. Now, there's something spicy we need to talk about. The raunchiness, the horniness in this show is unhinged. Once I started season 1, I thought, ooh, they have like spicy jokes, but it's like SpongeBob spicy jokes, where it's like once you become an adult, you understand that it's a spicy joke, but the kids don't get it. Then in season 2, they start to put the S word in jokes in front of the kids on the show. And then in season 3, it just escalates to chaos. Honestly, Fran and Mr. Sheffield flirt so hard in this show that sometimes after some episodes, I feel like I need a shower. The cherry on top is the episode where Fran and Mr. Sheffield play table tennis. I'm even scared of putting up a clip of this scene on the video because I think YouTube would demonetize it. I honestly almost threw myself off the couch after watching this. It was so goofy. Oh my god. After that, the last 2 seasons are just the Wild West, to be honest, and it just establishes itself as this edgy comedy show which is just not made for kids. Now I wish I had a gavel because I'm opening up the defense case in favor of C.C. Babcock. Now yes, I will agree, C.C. is many times a horrible, horrible person. She's a little bit of a Cruella de Vil. Like, what are you doing in that house for 10 years hoping to marry Mr. Sheffield and you don't even know his kids' names? Come on, girl. We need to make a little bit of effort here. Regardless, I do feel a bit sad that it feels like in the beginning, Sissy was only in the show almost to be the butt of the joke. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the Sissy and Niles banter as much as the next person, but sometimes it does feel like she gets a lot more hate than she actually deserves. In the first 2 seasons, she's just roasted left and right without provoking anything, which kind of feels a little bit like bullying. It was actually Lauren Lane, the actress that plays Cece, that went to the producers and asked them to have Cece come back or respond to Niles with the zingers. In my opinion, it made the show a lot better because then it feels like it's something they both do playfully and it's not just one-sided bullying. And let's not joke around, Lauren Lane is a great actress and she is funny as hell. Now, on a more serious note, it doesn't change the fact that the zingers that Niles lands on Cece are a product of the times. Most of the times the jokes revolve around Cece being fat, Cece being ugly, Cece looking like a man, Cece being undesirable. And I think the ones that kind of struck a chord with me is the ones where he jokes about Cece dying or being dead.
I think it's very distasteful of Maxwell to be dating so soon. Isn't a decade the standard period of mourning?
Die and let's find out.
Be caught dead in that dress.
You'd have to be dead 6 months to fit into it.
I'd rather die young.
And we're all pulling for you.
But personally, I'm not a fan of dark humor, so those things are just not my cup of tea anyway. But like, are we really saying that this woman is ugly, unattractive, undesirable? Are we? This woman is an unappreciated icon, my friends. That's what she is. I am coming in defense of C.C. Babcock because yes, while she has her flaws, she's privileged, she's got a big ego, she's a little bit of a Cruella de Vil, but she's also an ambitious, independent businesswoman working in an industry led by men who knows her worth. And also, can we just talk about her sense of style? Because I don't think we talk about that enough. The Nanny is a show that is recognized by the nanny's outfits. I will not deny they are iconic. I think whether you identify with the lady in red or everybody else who's wearing 10, and I'm completely not biased because you can see which side I lean on clearly, I don't think anyone can deny the fact that CC's outfits are so polished, they would still be stylish today. She's really got this classic beauty and elegance to her. She can wear a statement earring like no one else, and the woman can rock a pantsuit like nobody. And so for all of these reasons, it makes it all the more sad to me that they reduced Cece's character to being hung up on Max for a decade and having a mental breakdown when Fran and Max get engaged and she's sent to an asylum. And yes, this was a plot device that they used to cover up the fact that Lauren Lane in real life, the actress, got pregnant and was going to deliver her baby. But then it doesn't really sit well with me that when she came back, they used the fact that she gained weight from the pregnancy to prove the point that she was depressed. When in fact, the real life actress came back to work 2 weeks after delivering her baby, and she was actually going through postpartum depression herself. It's just one of those things that's a little disappointing looking back, but then again, this was the 90s, and the 90s weren't really the best era or decade for talking about mental health issues because that was just not a thing back then. Plus, the actress has also admitted that the jokes affected her and made her internalize a few things over the years. Even though reportedly she would be told that the jokes had nothing to do with her, that it was all just make-believe and that she was beautiful, I can understand how jokes that are targeted at the character where you're making fun of the character's appearance or body can affect an actor because the character's body is their own body. So after 6 years, I can empathize with her having internalized some of it because whether you like it or not, if someone tells you something enough times, you will start to believe it. This is all to say that I believe CC Babcock was done dirty on this show and I demand compensation. Moving on to my next defense case, Sylvia Fine. I'd read a few things about how Sylvia was portrayed on this show and what people thought about it, but in the first 2 seasons, I honestly didn't see anything wrong. It is then on season 3 that I started to see Sylvia's character being developed into focusing too much on her weight and an apparent inability to control herself around food. Suddenly, the woman just can't stop eating. By the end of season 4, her only 2 personality traits are being obsessed with food and being obsessed with Fran getting married. I found an article online talking about how the nanny was really progressive in representing the Jewish community in media in the 90s. I'm actually not the best person to talk about this from experience because the country I grew up in has one of the smallest Jewish communities in Europe, and the show focuses on a very specific Jewish community in New York, so I'll just refer to the article directly. Although for someone like me who's not very familiar with Jewish cultures and customs, apart from what I see on TV and films, I immediately had an aha moment when I heard Fran speak.
What can I say?
Well, how about here's a ring, pick a pattern.
Wait, where have I heard that before?
Smile, you're on Janet's camera.
Kill me now.
The difference is that Janice in Friends is a character that we would laugh at, not with. Whereas The Nanny, which is a show that aired 1 year before Friends, celebrates Jewish culture, and although there are some stereotypes, the jokes around their culture is something we laugh with, not at. In the article, the author writes, "It was the only show on television growing up where I saw family and culture that represented my own. The Jewish humor was specific, accurate, and made me feel as though us Jews were in on the joke rather than being laughed at." And to my point before about how the show portrays Sylvia, the author also remarks that Jewish culture is in part defined by its food and meals. Eating and feeding our loved ones is in the lexicon of the Jewish experience. In Sylvia's case, though, is not that she likes to eat because of her culture, it's that the writers decided to develop her character into being obsessed with food to an exaggerated degree. As in many comedy shows of the 90s, The Nanny thrives on loudness and exaggeration, and the countless jokes about Sylvia's weight and body just become her main character trait.
I'm having palpitations. Quick, get me my medicine.
As this was the 90s, I think we do have to see it as a product of the times. But what made me sad on the show was the way that Fran talks about her mom. One of Fran's biggest fears on the show, and Max's by extension, is that Fran will age into looking like her mom.
Aging is determined by your genes. Look at the bone structure, look at the jaw, look at the eyes, the lips. Behold the future.
Can't something be done?
In the course of the show, Sylvia goes on a diet because her doctor tells her that she needs to lose weight. We watch her struggle trying to keep the diet, but in the last couple of seasons, Renee Taylor, the actress playing Sylvia, actually loses a lot of weight. They absolutely acknowledge her weight loss on the show, and they make some jokes about her being sexier now that the weight is off and so on. But ultimately, they never really stop making the jokes that they made before about her appearance and about her obsession with eating, even though she had lost the weight.
I've decided to have some cosmetic surgery. I'm having my arms done. Look at this. It's just like tapioca pudding.
Ma, that is tapioca pudding.
Ultimately, I think The Nanny had really good baby steps taken in representation, namely for the Jewish community in the media in the 90s. So if they did decide to make a revival, I just hope they would be a little bit more kind to Sylvia, because I actually think she's hilarious and she's so dramatic, which is really funny. But I think we could maybe just do a little bit without the fat jokes. And finally, this segues nicely into the final section where I will talk about Fran and her relationship with food. As I said in the beginning, the food acting is impeccable, and I have absolutely no complaints about that. Fran is absolutely gorgeous, and I think the way that she carries the outfits is, in a way, part of the reason that so many people are drawn into this show. What I did notice on the show were a couple of subtle hints linked to the diet culture of the time, which I think are the kind of things that can be internalized by young viewers watching these shows, as in with any type of media. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Fran Fine has an issue with food. From the beginning of the show, we see it happen. There's an early episode where something upsets her and she gets a pizza and she goes into her bedroom, gets into bed, and is eating the pizza on the bed. And then someone comes in and she's so embarrassed that she hides the pizza. Throughout the show, we see this happen time and time again. Every time something upsets Fran, she turns to food.
I need to wear this. It gives me closure. Besides, black is slimming. And I'm gonna need it.
And it's something that's mostly associated with Fran and her mom, but even in the later episodes, there's a part where Niles misses C.C. and he turns to eating sweets, which is not typical for his character. Alongside this, we have Fran's reported lifetime Weight Watchers subscription, along with her mother's. This is a running gag on the show. They mention it a lot.
Cute son.
Oh, he's not my kid. I'm the nanny. If he were my son, he'd have big hair and be a lifetime member of Weight Watchers.
I don't think we ever see Fran actively diet or work out throughout the show, which is fine with me. We can all suspend our disbelief watching a show like this. They do make a few funny jokes about trying to follow some diet restrictions and failing because they love food too much.
Well, if no one is going to have any more of the cake, I'm going to put it away.
Oh, that's good.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Smart, yo, man.
But when Fran keeps mentioning Weight Watchers and dieting, it implies that she's constantly trying to keep her thin figure, even if it happens off screen somewhere. Interestingly, they explore this in an episode where her mother moves in and their bickering causes Fran to stress eat so much that she implies this is what caused her to be overweight when she was a child.
So, have I told you how glad I am that you're here?
Darling, rush and bring these to your husband. Tell him you made them.
Ma, you're doing that thing again.
What thing?
You know, that thing that caused me to weigh 140 pounds in the 5th grade?
He's a big step up from anything we thought you would wind up with.
This continues to help to portray the mother-daughter relationship in The Nanny as being very much hand-in-hand with appearance. Sylvia's obsessed with food and triggers food issues in Fran, and Fran, as a contrarian response, develops this aversion to ever looking like her mom or turning into her mom. The pursuit to remain thin, beautiful, and young is something that Fran uses as a help to achieve her goal. The goal of marrying, but specifically, if possible, to marry rich. As a side effect of this, she develops a terrible fear of aging into resembling her mom. When you unpack their relationship like this, it does make some sense and it's actually interesting and would be an interesting dynamic to explore, but when it's delivered through a comedy show and through jokes, it can land the wrong way. For me, it's the same thing with C.C. is when we're trying to make jokes targeting a character's appearance, but their appearance is in essence the actor's real life body. So where do we draw the line of understanding, are we making fun of Sylvia or are we making fun of Renee Taylor's appearance? For anyone who has ever wondered how the nanny remains so thin, I'm afraid the answer is not what we would expect to hear. According to Marie Claire magazine, Fran revealed that 10 years before the nanny, her house was broken into and she was essayed at gunpoint, and that it caused her to suffer with PTSD, and especially when she became famous and media started reporting on it. She reveals that between the first and sixth seasons, she lost about 30 pounds or 15 kilos. So this goes back to something that we've talked about on this channel so many times before, which is that we have unfortunately been conditioned to associate thinness to success and happiness, which is not always the case, and I'm so sorry that Fran had to go through this at that time. Ultimately, I absolutely loved watching The Nanny. There were a few things that annoyed me, but all in all, it's a really great show. I laughed so hard so many times watching it. It's still a very good comedy show. But despite liking the show, I still think that we can like something and still be able to criticize or point out flaws in things we like. So we can still watch the show, but recognize that times have changed. Again, this was an analysis and an interpretation of a show that came out 30 years ago, and specifically because the show turns 30 this year, in the eventual case that they decide to make a revival, I just hope the writers take these points into consideration and decide to make the show better. I just hope they don't make the same mistakes that the Gilmore Girls did with their revival. And that's it for today. Again, please feel free to debate in the comments, but just make it respectful. I am now very tired of talking and I need a glass of water. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.